What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, I want to talk about some year two breakout candidates for fantasy football. And obviously, last year, you had the guys like CJ Stroud, Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, Jahmyr Gibbs. These guys broke out as rookies. They were dominant fantasy football assets for our Dynasty fantasy football teams. And those aren't necessarily the players that I'm going to be talking about in today's video. I'm going to be talking about some guys that maybe they showed us some flashes, or maybe they didn't show us anything as a rookie at all, but things have changed. And I think these players have pathways to breaking out in 2024. And I'm going to tell you what it's going to take for them to break out for your Dynasty fantasy football rosters. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about my first breakout. So the first player that I'm going to talk about is probably the most obvious of all breakout candidates. It is going to be Anthony Richardson for the Indianapolis Colts. And last year, he finished as the quarterback 40. He averaged 18.4 fantasy points per game. And like I said, he is the most obvious breakout candidate. And the reason why is because in 2023, as a rookie, he only played in a total of 4 games. So he is going into his second year, but it does virtually feel like that rookie season because we didn't get to see too much playing time from Anthony Richardson as a rookie. And even though he played in 4 games, he still really only played in about 2 of them because 2 games that he played in were cut short due to injuries. So in the 2 games that we got to see a full workload from Anthony Richardson, he did finish as the QB4 and the QB2 on those weeks, and he did average 25.75 fantasy points per game in those 2 matchups. And Richardson immediately showed off his rushing upside, scoring 4 rushing touchdowns and rushing for 136 rushing yards in those matchups. So he showed us that he can be a cheat code for fantasy football rosters. Now in year 2, Richardson, he does have a healthy Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Michael Pittman Jr. is under a new long-term contract. They also have added rookie Adonai Mitchell, who's going to be playing opposite of Pittman, and they have a second-year wide receiver in Josh Downs with a creative play caller in Shane Steichen. Now, obviously, all of these things are great for Anthony Richardson and for his development, and I think Anthony Richardson is one of the few quarterbacks that has the potential to be the QB1 on any type of season, and I think he should have a real shot at doing that during the 2024 year as well. Now, the second player I want to talk about is going to be at the tight end position. We'll talk about Dalton Kincaid here for the Buffalo Bills, and last year he had a pretty solid year, finished as the tight end 11 overall. He averaged 9.4 fantasy points per game, which was 14th best at the tight end position. And really what it took for Dalton Kincaid to kind of start showing us his potential was a Dawson Knox injury that happened in week 7. So it did allow Dalton Kincaid to come in and take the starting job moving forward. But once he did, he never gave it back. So that was good news for Dalton Kincaid. Now, he posted a year of 73 receptions for 673 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns in 2023. And despite the later start, Kincaid still was top 12 in targets, routes run, receptions, receiving yards, yards after the catch, and true catch rate as a rookie, proving that in a full season, he could have the tight end 1 type of potential. Now, with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis out the door in 2024, this does open up a massive opportunity for Dalton Kincaid, potentially making him the number 1 receiving option in this offense, similar to how Travis Kelce has been in Kansas City for many years. And there's also a major chance for positive touchdown regression due to him only scoring those 2 touchdowns in 2023. And I think with a bump in targets and a bump in touchdowns, Kincaid feels to me like a can't miss breakout. Now, if Kincaid breaks out the way that I think he can and the way that I think he will in 2024, this is a guy who I think can enter the conversation as the tight end 1, and it'll be a real conversation of whether it is going to be Dalton Kincaid or Sam Laporta moving forward. Now, let's talk about a guy who didn't necessarily show us the most in 2023. We are going to talk about Bryce Young, quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, and he finished as the QB 23 overall. So a low-end quarterback 2 for your rosters, but the fantasy points per game, they tell us a little bit of a different story. 10.4, 29th overall, so that was definitely not QB2 numbers. Now, like I said, Bryce Young, he did have a disappointing rookie year after being the number 1 overall pick for the Carolina Panthers in 2023. He posted 2,877 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. However, the Panthers, they didn't really put him in a position to succeed out of the gate. We all know the story: a bad offensive line, minimal weapons, the negative game scripts. It was really a recipe for disaster for Bryce Young. Now, because of that, Bryce was top 12 in passing attempts. He was top 12 in air yards, danger plays, interceptable passes. Really nothing great to see there. And the Panthers were also a top 15 team in dropped passes, so it's not like he was getting a lot of help from the surrounding cast either. Now, going into year 2, the Panthers, they have made quite a few changes. They've hired new head coach Dave Canales, who has also helped many quarterbacks in the past improve at the NFL level. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, some of them to name a few. And they have tried to add a few more weapons for Bryce Young, obviously using a first-round pick on Xavier Legette. They've added Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Brooks, Jatavion Sanders. There's a lot of talent that's being added to this roster. And you also look at the offensive line, who did a very bad job protecting Bryce Young last year. They've added 3 new pieces on that offensive line as well in free agency. So as you can see, the pieces are being put around Bryce Young right now for him to potentially take a step forward and kind of break out in the 2024 season. So if you wanted to buy in on Bryce Young, you wanted to make that bet on Bryce Young being a potential breakout, you can buy him right now for pretty much floor prices. But if you do decide to make that bet and you do buy him at those floor prices, I think the risk to this is if he doesn't perform, if he doesn't take that step forward, Dynasty fantasy football managers may be ready to throw Bryce Young away just after 2 years. So you could be buying an asset that just never does reach its peak form. But like I said, it's a low risk type of buy in Bryce Young. And if they get back to, I don't know, just league average on the offensive side of the football, I think you can find some value in a guy like Bryce Young. Now moving on to our next guy, we will talk about a guy who was hyped but didn't really perform. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and he finished the year as the wide receiver 48. He averaged 8.8 fantasy points per game, which was good for 56th at the wide receiver position, and JSN was probably the wide receiver version of Bryce Young in 2023 when it came to the underperforming, when it came to disappointing Dynasty fantasy football managers who spent first-round draft capital on him. Now, he posted a 2023 stat line of 63 receptions for 628 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns, and most people who had a sense of reality, they did feel like this year may be a little bit of a slow start because he did have some competition in that wide receiver room. We also know that Pete Carroll typically was a run-first type of offense, but that slow start, it just lasted the entire season. So the slow start really just never got started. Now, there are some promising numbers to come away from his rookie year, so when you look deep enough at it, primarily being that JSN is a damn good separator, just like we expected, you see that he was 6th overall in target separation, 9th overall in average cushion, and he posted a 70th percentile success rate against both man and zone coverage. So these are very positive numbers to see out of a guy like JSN. But going into year 2, Lockett is still on the roster, but Seattle has moved on from Pete Carroll. They've brought over Mike McDonald from the Baltimore Ravens, and more importantly, they've brought in Ryan Grubb, the former offensive coordinator of the Washington Huskies. And this is important because Grubb used 3 wide receiver sets often at Washington. He had multiple wide receivers being valuable in that offense. Obviously, we know Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan, and he had that Washington Huskies team looking like the best passing offense in college football last year. Now, JSN, he will be the slot wide receiver long-term here in Seattle, but more 3 wide receiver sets is going to be good for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. It just means he's going to get more opportunity to be on the football field, and we hope that Ryan Grubb can kind of elevate this offense from what was normally a run-heavy offense to a pass-heavy offense moving forward. And as we know with the data that we have seen today, if Jaxon does get the opportunity, he does have the talent to break out with that said opportunity. So we will see what happens with Jaxon Smith-Njigba in year 2. But like I said, he needs some more opportunity, but if he gets it, he should prove everybody wrong. Now, moving on to our next player here, we are going to talk about Will Levis, the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. And Levis finished as the QB 33 in 2023. He also averaged 11.8 fantasy points per game, which was good for the 26th overall quarterback. So not quite a QB2 yet. Now, Will Levis, who probably is trending for the wrong reasons at the moment, was a faller in the 2023 NFL draft before landing with the Tennessee Titans and taking over as the starter in week 8 of last season. Now, in those 9 games as a starter, Levis posted 1,808 passing yards, 8 passing touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. And it's also worth noting that 4 of the 8 passing touchdowns that he threw last year, they came in one game during week 8 against the Atlanta Falcons, where Will Levis would finish as the QB6, being Levis's only week of quarterback 1 production. Now, going into year 2, you can start kind of putting the puzzle pieces together for a potential Will Levis breakout. Titans, they've hired Brian Callahan, former offensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals. This is important because despite Joe Burrow missing time in 2023, the Bengals, they were still a top 10 passing offense in terms of attempts. And not only does that mean that Levis should throw more in 2024, but the Titans have also added some more pieces around Will Levis in Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and Tony Pollard, and they've added some additional protection in Lloyd Cushenberry and J.C. Latham. Now, it does seem like Tennessee is going to give Will Levis the chance to show everybody that he can be the QB1 of the Tennessee Titans moving forward as their franchise quarterback, but a bad year in 2024 could potentially mean a short leash for Will Levis, especially because he wasn't drafted in the first round like some of the other rookies in last year's class. Now, moving on to our second to last guy, we are going to talk about Zay Flowers, the wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens here, and he finished as the wide receiver 30 in 2023. He averaged 12.9 fantasy points per game, which was 31st overall, so right on par with where he finished. And statistically speaking, Zay Flowers, he did have one of the better rookie seasons of these wide receivers. He posted 77 receptions for 858 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns, and Flowers finished the year with 6 top 24 finishes on the week, posting wide receiver 2 numbers or better, and half of those weeks he was a top 12 wide receiver on the week. Now, it is worth noting that all but one of those weeks are when Mark Andrews was out, not playing for the Baltimore Ravens with an injury. So this does make Zay Flowers a little bit of a riskier bet, especially when we were trying to predict a breakout. But if you do want to bet on that, which for the record right now, I am not completely sold on it, but if you are going to bet on the fact that he is going to break out in 2024, it is going to have to be because the Baltimore Ravens have brought in zero competition to compete with Zay in 2024. Odell Beckham Jr., he's left. He's gone to Miami. This has opened up about 14% of the targets that could easily be taken by Zay Flowers. And additionally, the only competition behind Zay right now in that wide receiver room is Rashad Bateman, who's kind of been a failed experiment up to this point, Nelson Aguilar, and rookie Devontae Walker, who I am just not impressed with. And we just know that Zay Flowers is a lot more talented than these guys in the room so far. Now, the good news is Zay was elite versus zone coverage as a rookie. He saw an 85% success rate, landing him in the 90th percentile. But if we want to see him break out as a sophomore here in 2024, we need to see an uptick in volume. We need to see him kind of establish himself as the number one or the number two receiving threat alongside Mark Andrews, which he didn't do in 2023. So that is kind of a red flag or an orange flag, depending on how you want to look at it. And because of that, if you are going to bet on Zay Flowers being a breakout, this is going to be a buyer's beware. But the good news is he should have a very safe floor, so there is probably not too much risk in buying a guy like Zay Flowers. Now, our last and final guy who could break out in 2024 is going to be Jayden Reed, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. And Jayden finished as the wide receiver 25 last year. He had 13.6 fantasy points per game, which was good for the 26th wide receiver, so right on par like we mentioned with Zay Flowers. And if you guys have been around for a while, you know that Jayden Reed, he's been one of my favorite sleepers. He was one of my favorite sleepers in the 2023 NFL draft. We drafted a lot of Jayden Reed on our fantasy football teams, and so far he looks like he's paying off as that type of bet that we made in 2023. Now, he posted a stat line of 64 receptions. He had 793 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns, and Reed did take most of his snaps in the slot, and he won a lot as an underneath wide receiver for Green Bay in 2023. Now, Reed, he posted nice numbers against man, zone, and press, proving that he is a super talented, well-rounded wide receiver who can win against any type of coverage. And I'd be lying if I said he was a totally complete wide receiver. He can tighten up some of the route running, but he did show us that in year one, he could be the long-term number one fantasy wide receiver in this offense, and he's the perfect layup option for a guy like Jordan Love playing quarterback. Now, going into year two, if we could see Jayden earn a larger target share in this offense and become a consistent playmaker in this offense, I think the ceiling is going to be sky high for him, because most of the numbers he produced as a rookie were on 56.8% snap shares, which was 82nd in the NFL. So more opportunity is going to be key if Jayden Reed is going to break out this season. So if those snap share and if those target share numbers go up for him, I think we could see Reed turn into a guy that could give you wide receiver 2 production on a week-to-week basis, who also would possess wide receiver 1 upside on any given week, especially playing in an up-and-coming Green Bay Packers offense like this, and an offense where he could have a lot of touchdown upside as well. Now, that is all we have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. Also, make sure you guys let me know in the comment section down below which year 2 players, rookies from the 2023 NFL class, do you think are going to break out in 2024? And also let me know your thoughts on the players we talked about in the comment section down below. Make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel and hitting the notification bell. That way you guys always see future content when it comes out, and you're notified when it comes out. That way you don't miss a future video. And last but not least, make sure you guys are a member of the Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description. We are helping you guys with your dynasty teams, redraft teams, best ball teams, all things fantasy football, dynasty fantasy football related. It's the best way to get in contact with me and ask me those questions. And like I said, it's free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. And with all that out of the way, we will see you guys on our next video. But until then, peace out.